now.
Yeah,
a little
that's
bit.
no
I just
problem
want
at
you to
all.
know. I
None
got
whatsoever.
a bunch of caterers coming. Come on in.
Do what you need to do.
You related to Cole?
Is that your son? Yeah. I'll be heading to his house next.
Oh, he's good
But he's
deal.
just got a new baby.
Thank you for
That's
being
why they're
here.
not here.
All right. Is this it? Is it volume? Okay, everybody, we're about to start Mke Reese into all the world. And I selected this title for Mike because this guy really is into all the world. But the amazing story about Mike, and my sister's here, we've known him probably close to 50 years when you get down to it. And when you think about life, that's a long time on this earthly.
And we still like each other.
Yeah. Well, I was so impressed with his story because, how he became a Christian, and he's done so much in the kingdom. And in Mannington, West Virginia, at the church there, and correct me if I'm wrong, and very intelligent guy. That's one thing I learned many, many years ago. And I'm just thankful that he's on our team, so to speak. We talk sports a lot, so I'll use that. But I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and thank you all. I will be in and out some of the room because I got to do something. Thank you. We're all good.
Alan, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for the invitation. It's truly an honor to be here and share a work that I absolutely love. Our group is small. Honestly, my first choice would have been Lonnie. My second would have been Neil. My third choice would have been me. But we're here together. And there's no way I can share everything I want to share with you in 40 minutes. It's just impossible. But into all the world, the impact of short-term mission work. Our marching orders. What I'm going to do in our time together, and if you have a question or a comment or anything, just raise your hand and we'll talk about it, okay? If we don't get through the slides, that's no big deal. How many of you have ever been on a short-term mission trip? When you took that short-term mission trip, either before, during, or after, did you wonder if you had made any impact at all? Was it effective? What am I doing here? I think we've all been there. So what I'm going to do, we're going to talk about the impact of short-term mission work in 4 different areas. We're going to look at how it impacts the native congregation, the native Christians, the sending congregation, and the individual going. And I'm going to just share what I know. I'm going to share my experiences with you. I'm not going to go through all the places I've been. That's irrelevant. Recently, I've devoted almost all of my time in mission work to Kenya. Kenya, of course, is right on the equator. I think the most times I've crossed the equator in one day has either been 6 or 8. So I'm that close to working close to the equator. I do a lot of my work in Kisumu, right on the shores of Lake Victoria, but I'm going to reference 2 additional works that are near and dear to my heart. And one is right up in this area. When I talk about Chwele, C-H-W-E-L-E, we're right up here in the Mount Elgon region. One of my dear friends and students, and now we're more of a Paul Barnabas relationship, used to be Paul Timothy, but he's worked twice right here in Busia, Uganda. And where I work, I come right up real close to Busia. Then I also work way down in this region in Masai Mara. So keep this geographic visual in mind. So first of all, the native church. I believe what is so valuable, you just being there, first of all, is a tremendous honor to them. That's just the way it is. I look at the local guys as my heroes. They look at me as their hero. But honestly, they just work so hard. So the training and the mentoring, I believe that's what we can offer. We know that we are to equip God's people for works of ministry from Ephesians chapter 4 and that church growth model from Ephesians 4. What I want to focus on in my work and in sharing with you is the evangelism and edification. I'm going to give you some examples of how we impact the local Christians, the local congregations. Then, when I first went to Kenya, I looked around and there were kids everywhere. And Kenya is a relatively young country. So how can we reach these people? It's a whole lot easier to teach a kid than it is a 70-year-old adult. So I have focused my work on Kenya Christian Youth Camp, Christian schools, and preacher training schools, as well as getting out in the field and being a true gospel practitioner. I want to just share some folks that we've worked with. Wagusu. Got an invitation to go to Wagusu on the shore of Lake Victoria, and they were meeting under a tree. And since my first visit to Wagusu, actually, I went, I think, late 2011 in one of my trips. But in 2012, we did an evangelistic effort, Vacation Bible School Gospel Meeting, and we involved the Northwest congregation from Canton, Ohio. This is Keith Call, who was a longtime preacher there. He's since retired, and we had several of their members that went with us. Marcus Stinson. Marcus has spoken several times on the program here. And Brandon Kearns. Now, I'm going to age myself a little bit. For 25 years, I was co-director of West Virginia Christian Youth Camp All Age Week. And come on in. As they say in Kenya, karibu. That means welcome.
Thank you.
I had both of these young guys as campers at West Virginia Christian Youth Camp. Now, the impact of a short-term mission trip. Imagine the thrill of going to Mumias, which is 85% Muslim, and working with these two men, going from a Paul Timothy now to a Paul Barnabas relationship, and now, Dean, we're peers, we're working together. And how fulfilling that was to be a part of this church plant way back in 2012 and working with the local evangelist Dickens in this highly Muslim population area. And now Mumias, I checked on them in April of this year when I was in Kenya, and they've planted since that time several churches, and they are thriving. I want to tell you about these two men. This is Jonathan and this is Elias. We bought a lot of land, well, not a lot, 5 or 6 acres off of this man and his family to place the Ahono Church of Christ building and the Ahono Tumaini School. I'll tell you more about that in just a little while. Elias was, there's no kind way to put it, Elias had an addiction. But in one of my trips, I noticed that Elias, you couldn't smell the addiction on his breath. And he was in church services. Long story short, we got a Bible study with Elias. He was very articulate and literate. He could read from the English Standard Version out loud. Come to find out, he had been an officer in the Kenyan Air Force. And anyway, this has been about, I think, 2016, when Elias was baptized, and he's been faithful ever since. Now, he'll fall off the wagon once in a while, but for the most part, he's faithful. Here's a picture of Jonathan. Jonathan was from an area village and heard about our Christian youth camp and our adult class that we had, and we invited Jonathan, and Jonathan brought baskets that he makes. You can see he has a severe disability, but Jonathan, we studied with him. He was baptized, and as far as I know, last time I checked, Jonathan's still a faithful member of the Lord's church. Jan, Heather Yoho. We're going to have to talk and see if there's any relation there, okay? One of our elders' daughters, she was a little girl when Linda and I first moved to Mannington, and now she goes on a short-term mission trip with us. She's been to Kenya, I think, 3 times. Mike Jones, who is a deacon at a congregation out in Ritchie County, out at Pennsboro. I'll tell you more about them. They're part of our team. I was in Regingani in April of this year and was able to help participate in a gospel meeting. I told you about Wagusu that was meeting under a tree in 2011. 2012, we visit. The church has continued to grow. Since that time, Wagusu has planted the church in Ndwara, which is a congregation now of about 65 to 70, and the church in Regengeni. I was there with Dr. Denny Petrillo, president of Bear Valley, in January of 2020. Just at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were there for the very first Sunday when this church was planted, and it's so fulfilling now. We're in the process of helping them build a church building, and they're just doing a great job. So we took our students at the Kenya School of Preaching out for a week-long campaign, and I was able to help with this effort. Kenya School of Preaching did our survey trip in November of 2011 and saw that there was a need for a preacher training school in western region of Kenya. This is our rented facility. We've since moved into a permanent facility. I do not have pictures of the permanent facility because I think that's irrelevant. What's relevant is we are in our 5th class. It is a 2-year full-time program. These men come for 37 weeks out of the year, and we try and mimic the Bear Valley Bible Institute of Denver curriculum as near as we can and teach to that level, to that standard. And that's part of my responsibility to make sure that that is done. We have 3 Bear Valley preacher training schools in Kenya, 5 in East Africa. Talk more about that in just a moment. Our Gamma class. This is John Paul, who I have worked with now in many, many efforts, camps, evangelistic efforts, etc. John Paul was one of our students in our first class, and he's just done a wonderful job since that. This was our class that graduated in March of 2021. And here I taught Ezekiel Daniel, an education program of the church, in April of this year. Now, we have 3 Bear Valley schools in Kenya, and then we have 2 preacher training schools that are not associated with Bear Valley, and I'll talk more about those here in just a moment. Now, impact of short-term mission trip. We never ever would have had any of these schools, well, I shouldn't say that. By the short-term mission trips, the doors were open for us to be able to go and do our surveys and place these schools in these areas. Bear Valley now has 54 schools around the world with right at 1,000 preacher training students. In the past 5 years, our Bear Valley International students, while in school, have conducted 17,082 baptisms, planted 369 new congregations, restored 124 churches. To God be the glory. Dean, that's getting with it. That's why they're students. Thank God, we praise God for the increase. Now I want to talk about the camp. Looked around, all these kids. Hey, come on in. Looked around and you have these kids everywhere. I'd been a director of West Virginia Christian Youth Camp with my late dear friend Keith Ball. Had camp experience going back many years, back to about 1982, I think. So I wondered if camp would work in Kenya. Well, we'll find out. So this camp has served as a great model of teaching, training, and mentoring. We have, in conjunction with the camp, leadership seminar to adults where we take the men and we have a class for them. We have a class for the ladies, and ladies are so neglected in third world countries. If you ladies have ever gone on a mission trip to a third world country, I hope that you spend some time with the ladies, because here's the pecking order: men, children, animals, women is pretty well the pecking order. The Christian training, teaching, and modeling to the campers was so valuable, but the leadership development, the very first camp and the very first staff manual, we had the director, and the director in training. We had the dean and the dean in training, nursing right on down the line. We wanted everyone to train someone. So, we brought up a team from Tanzania. I was actually the very first camp. I started out in Tanzania, and then we went and we drove up to Kenya because these men, Ahimadiwe Kamaro and Ellie Martin and their wives had camp experience. I said, and Charles Heberth. I said, will you go help us conduct this camp? They went for a couple of years. So they're mentoring the Kenyans. Everyone has someone that they're mentoring and they're training. This is a man who grew up in the congregation where I preach. His grandfather and father both served as elders, and he joined us. He did a lot of work in India, but now he's working with us in Kenya. So, we started out with 256 our very first year. Then in 2016, we had 512 present with 29 baptisms. 2018, over 700 present with 68 baptisms. Any of you ever attended a Christian youth camp or worked at a Christian youth camp? What's the largest number you've ever had at one of your camps?
About 200.
200. That's a big camp. West 80. I directed all age at West Virginia Christian Youth Camp, and the most we ever had was 126. We had to cut it off because we're very space conscious, okay? I'm going to get out of the picture, but that's okay. Dean, you're uncomfortable right now, aren't you? Because I'm right here beside you. In Kenya, there's no such thing as personal space. How? Now, we're not done yet. In 2019, just before the pandemic, we had over 1,000 in attendance Sunday through Thursday, and God blessed us with 47 baptisms and a total of 51 for the trip. 4 went back home and were baptized after camp closed. How did we do it? No such thing as personal space. We bought mattresses, single foam mattresses. We'd clean out the church building, we used the Ahono Tumaini School campus facility, and we would just have we'd sweep and mop at the end of the day, let it dry, which it dried very quickly, dry climate, put the solid from wall to wall mattresses down, and we'd count up to 5, I call them pee-wees, our youngest campers, 5 little pee-wees on one mattress, and they would just sleep. And we had the guards every 3-hour shift. They would come in and make sure everything's okay. Now, a little bit about this camp. About the 4th year, when I sent the staff manual over for my dear friend, and I couldn't do any of the work there without David Wasonga, and he printed it, no longer was I director. He was the director, because the 3rd year he would come to me. He was the director in training, and he'd come to me, what should I do? I said, you're the director, you figure it out. And I just sat back. So the 4th year he caught on. No longer was he the director in training.
Isn't that kind of how, isn't that model relatively new to foreign missions?
Yeah. Yeah.
That one time it was, we'll send an American, the American will stay there 30 years and then he'll come home.
Yeah, and the work will collapse.
Okay, that was my question. Like, what's necessitated that type of change?
Just what I said. The work collapses. This way.
So reliant on that one person.
That's right, and everyone looked to him now, and that's why I love working with Bear Valley. Their motto, 2 Timothy 2:2, you train faithful men who will teach others. Our goal, 20 years, we have 20 years life expectancy of a preacher training school. Then we have people, and we move out, and they do it. Just as quickly as we can, let them do it. My motto, I will not do for you what you can do for yourself. Train you to do it. Short course, as a matter of fact, let me tell you a quick story, and if we run out of time, that's okay. We will supplement our teachers in our Bear Valley schools with American short course teachers. At the Kenya School of Preaching several years ago, I had it set up for David Wasonga to teach 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus for several reasons. One, he already had his master's degree down at Andrew Conley, another Bear Valley school. That's where I met him in Arusha, Tanzania. Second, he was very capable of teaching that class. Third, he was in one of the few more mature congregations in Kenya, and he had gone through the process of teaching and going through that selection process of selecting elders and working underneath an eldership. I thought, he's perfect to teach this class. Well, along comes an American and who wants to do a short-term mission trip, who has taught in East Africa, and he talks to David down in Arusha and says, I think I'll come and teach 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus, and maybe another short course. So David, deferring to him, said, okay. When I found out about it, I called up the man and I said, hey, first of all, I'm the coordinator and I approve or disapprove all short course teachers. Second, you're not going to Kenya. Now, he's a dear friend. I could talk to him this way. I said, and here's why. And I gave him the reasoning of why I wanted David to teach that class. Guess who's taught 1st, 2nd Timothy, Titus from then on? David. Done a phenomenal job. We'll tie that back in here in just a minute. Excellent question. Any other, you see the reasoning behind the approach and the method, and what an impact you can make on people in these short-term mission trips. Now, 2020, we had to cancel the youth camp due to the pandemic. Everyone's disappointed. 2021, I'm going to go over in August, and we get special permission from the health department. They came, and that's Seaya County. So the Seaya County Health Department comes, and they inspect our facility and say, yes, you can have a youth camp with 500 campers, that's all. Thank you, Lord, that's great. 1 week before I was supposed to go over and help conduct the camp, they pulled the plug and said, you cannot do that. I was so disappointed. Oh, come on. So I get over there, and the government had said, meeting cannot have more than 200 participants. So we got together with the leadership, and here's what we did. We would call it a youth rally, one-day event. We had, I think, actually 8, if I counted the congregations right, because we had these congregations participating. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's who attended. Here's how many baptisms we had. We had a total of 1,402 people present on that one-day event at these congregations, and God blessed us with 42 baptisms. So, yeah.
What is ATS?
Ahono Tumaini School.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, Ahono Tumaini School. I didn't have room on the slide.
I got you.
I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute, Dean, okay? Good question. One thing about the camp before I go. I was out preaching out in a village down over a hill. I couldn't get there now if my life depended on it. And at the end, and I looked, and we would print, for camp, we would print songbooks. And every year we'd have to print new songbooks. And I say, David, why do we have to print these songbooks? Can't we use them over? And he'd say, no. They take them with them, and that's the songbooks at the congregation where these children attend. Okay, so I got out in the field and I got to looking, and yes, I noticed that this congregation this Sunday, 3 or 4 of the girls there had the songbooks, and then they had Bibles, and I recognized them. Those were some girls that we had baptized that week at camp. And at the end of the service, when everything was over, an elderly lady asked permission to speak. And through a translator, she said this, that she was back in the 90s, some of the original Christians that had been converted when American missionaries went through. The church thrived, the older men died, and the church was literally dying. And now, because of 2 things, because of our students at the Kenya School of Preaching coming and helping, and some of our younger people in the village that had gone to camp and were converted and coming back and helping, that church had been revitalized. Short-term mission work made an impact. By the way, this is our facility at the Ahono Tumaini School. Tell you about that here in just a minute. But this is just a picture of the youth event last year at Ahono. By the way, Tumaini is the Swahili word for hope. our Ahono Hope School. We give these kids hope. 2007, got on an Akamba bus out of Arusha, rode all night, got up to, they dropped us off at Luanda, Kenya on the way to Busia. You've been there, I think, you know where I'm talking about. And I don't even know how I got out to Ahono, some way I got out there. 10 o'clock started a Bible seminar. At 7 o'clock, finally, I said, I got to go, I'm dying, let's go. We're done. Went back the next day. But out of that, Tom Alusala was baptized. And since that time, Tom went to Arusha, Tanzania to Andrew Conley, got his 2-year degree, and he's come back and he has planted the church in Luanda. Luanda has planted several other churches, and he has started a preschool up through grade 3. In April, when I was there and visited, they have 200 students in that school. And here's just a picture of some of the kids there. We're in the process of upgrading his facilities. Can you imagine you ladies and men who cooking for 200 students this way? So we're getting them an upgrade. Able to buy them curriculum. We were able to drill a well. Healing Hands International and Christian Relief Fund and others who have studied this, when we place a well in a village, on average, it impacts 5,000 people a week. 5,000 people. Now, with the Christian school, the church planted, and the well, Dean, you think that maybe the village is getting the church is getting the attention of the village? Move on up to Mount Elgon, up to Chiwele. Tell you the story of Chiwele. This is Moses Samio Wambigliano, Justin, and I can't remember her last name, but it's different than her husband's because they do things differently in Kenya. And this is Moses' mother. Moses was a student, graduated from Kenya School of Preaching, Kisumu, in March of 2021. We had to shut the school down for several months due to the pandemic. During that time, he did not sit and watch Netflix and binge on television programs. They took World Bible School correspondence courses out, and our students who were up in that area, he, William Atima, and Kevin Agutu, went out with other evangelists. And what did they do? They planted, I'll tell you the churches that they planted, but during this time, the way things normally are done in a third world country, at least in East Africa, you'll ask someone, how many children do you have? I have 5 biological children, and I have 3 that we're raising. And those that they're raising have been orphaned either partially or fully because the parent or parents have died of some disease, AIDS, typhoid, malaria, something. So what happened is when the pandemic hit, these families, their own biological children were starving. They said, we're not going to, and we've got these others that we've taken to raise, we're not going to let ours starve. So they started bringing these children to Moses and Justin, and he started taking them in. And he would contact me, we need help. Long story short, I said, we got to stop. There's 1 billion people in Africa, we can't raise them all. So we stopped at 39. And we were able to build a boys' dorm and a girls' dorm. We were able to build a kitchen. We were able to, I'll back up here in just a minute. We were able to drill a well because the girls were traveling about 1.5 miles, 3 miles, morning and evening, to get water to the nearest water source. These are 7 of our 10 high school students. Tell you more about them in just a minute. This is Duncan. Duncan is a true orphan, destitute, was taken in during this time. To every November or during the 8th grade, sometime during the 8th grade year, every 8th grade student takes a national test. And if you place high enough, score high enough, they place you in a secondary school, high school. Duncan, I think the possible was 410. He scored 392. That's like what, 1,500 on the ACT, 34 on the SAT, 34 on the ACT. He wants to be a surgeon. Starving to death when he came. We're giving him an education. He is being trained. He attends church services there every Sunday. Think he's going to have an impact? All as a result of we took some time to go up there on a short-term mission trip. Here's the well provided by the Atwood Church of Christ. Now, during this time of pandemic, Moses and these guys were out. They were very busy. Now, just since January of this year, these men have distributed and graded 1,830 World Bible School correspondence courses. There have been 138 baptisms since January of 2022, 7 churches planted since January 1 of this year, and the 13 preacher training students at Chihuahua since March of 2020 up through December of 2021 planted 13 new congregations. So we have a total of 20 new congregations planted since March of 2020. And what we've done is these congregations had to be matured. So Moses and William and Kevin, somewhere in the picture, said, we need to start a preacher training school. So we picked one select man out of each congregation, and we are using the Bear Valley curriculum. God willing, August 27th, I'll be there for their first graduation. I was able to visit them in April of this year, and David Wasonga accompanied me, and guess who, and this was a seminar on the eldership. Guess who I let do most of the teaching in this seminar? Local David. I was just there basically to give him a ride. And his wife Rose. Beautiful things happened in this area of Kenya. You talk about mentoring. Some of the older, more mature Christians like Rose, this is Rose conducting a ladies' seminar there at Chihuahua while David and I were there. But once a month, these ladies now in this Western region area, each congregation will host a ladies' day, no American money, and the ladies now, some of the more mature ladies, are teaching these younger ladies, and this all started by mentoring back years ago. This is the payment that Rose got for teaching sugarcane, and we had 102 present that day. Tell you a story about Agunja. We had a Bible seminar there in, I think, 2012 or 13, I'm not sure. But it was outside. A man by the name of John Aluch, who Brandon Kearns had hired 2 years before to drive his van, to do his evangelism. John was not a member of the Lord's church. He listened to all of the speakers that year. The next year, Brandon goes back with his team, hires John to drive the van. And John says, I will drive your van, but you must come to my village first, Monday morning. Brandon says, I already have the schedule set up. I can't do that. Yes, you must. Brandon shows up. There's over 30 people there. There's a tent set up. Long story short, out of John's own pocket, he funded that gospel meeting. John was baptized that day. His wife, Hasnat, was baptized at the end of the gospel meeting. Long story short, a church of 16 resulted in that gospel meeting that week. Short-term mission trip. Brandon and his team. I came the next year, and I'm preaching, teaching, speaking, and a man by the name of Joseph is walking by one of these hedges right over here. I'll show you his picture here in a little bit. Yeah, we'll get to it later. He stopped and he listened. After I left, he found John Aluch. They studied with this young man. He becomes a Christian. He goes to a local preacher training school, Christians for Kenya, that Brandon Kearns helps fund. He graduates. He's in our second or third class at Kenya Kenya School of Preaching. He goes back to Rambula, and he's since planted, I know, one other church just because he was walking by and heard the gospel being preached. Does that give you goosebumps? Ladies teaching ladies, phenomenal impact. I got to speed things up. I got to tell you the story of Murega. A man by the name of Sylvanus Ontonga, he's in a U.S. prison in Texas. Comes in contact with a Bible correspondence course, becomes a Christian, begs someone, take this back to my village. Someone contacted Tom Music of Truth for the World. Tom since passed on due to cancer. And Tom contacts Charles Agutu. In 2010, these men who I've worked with, all these men out in the field, they go to Murega. On their second visit, 12 were baptized. In 2012, Brandon Kearns makes a brief visit to Murega. 2013, I go there with a team, conduct a gospel meeting, and during this time, Paul Odemba is baptized, and he is now the preacher at Murega. He has since graduated from the Kenya School of Preaching, and I talked with him just last week, and this is Paul right here. Both of these guys have gone through the Kenya School of Preaching, and it's all a result of getting out in the field on a short-term mission trip. Conducted little Bible seminars all throughout this area, get out in the field, and it impacts the people. Now I want to move down to Masai Mara. This is Jacob Paramawet. I actually talked to Jacob this morning. We planned the graduation for their preacher training school. Here we are with Jacob Paramawet and Jacob Kajape, both graduates of KSOP, Kenya School of Preaching, and we're discussing the Masai Mara Preacher Training School and the Masai Women's Literacy Program. This lady right here, when I visited them, she, through a translator, said, I attend services every time, every Sunday. I can't read. She says, I carry my Bible. And she pulled her Bible out. She said, could you teach us how to read? So we're doing a literacy program there. As well as the Preacher Training School, again, the same model. We have all these new congregations. There's 12 new congregations. We have 8 that are represented, and these men have gone through 2 years of study, graduation scheduled for August 22nd of this year. When you have interaction like this with the local folks, make any friends when you were in Uganda?
Yeah. I'm actually just talking to one on Messenger right now.
Cool.
He from Uganda, he says, hey, how you doing? And I was just like, I may be seeing you soon. And he's like, I miss you more than, he said, I miss you beyond words.
Yeah, and you form these relationships. So, begins with a Timothy-Paul relationship that you have with this man, because I'm assuming he was one of your students when you taught in Busia, okay? So it's like my relationship with Tom, okay? And here I am, well, I'm not there, but I'm taking the picture. In 2013, out in the field at Luanda, 23 present. We were there in 2016, 120 present. There's my wife Linda and Heather. And when, I got to tell you a quick story. It's funny to me. They're used to American Bible classes where you have 8, 10 kids. How many are we going to have? I said, I'd prepare for 50 at least. Oh, we won't have 50. How many did you prepare for?
I think 50.
Okay.
Well,
They prepared for about 35.
but I bought a box of 80 crayons.
She bought a box of 80 crayons. Guess how many she had in her class? 80, right? 80 kids showed up. And each child got one crayon. Linda, did they complain at all?
Not even the one that got the white one.
Not even the one that got the white one. And, just relationships like this. There's Tom Alusala, Ernest, both baptized during that 20, whatever year it was, that we took the Akamba bus up to Kenya. Now, this is Peter Ray, who is a dear friend of mine, grew up where I preach, and I call this the Peter Ray of Kenya. I think they even look alike, they act alike, and what's happened is Peter Ray has taken Zachary under his wing and he's his mentor now. He's his mentor. Same thing out at Nyamasari. This is where John Aluch was. This is John right back here. And this is part of our team here and here from the Northwest congregation in Canton, Ohio. Then you have the Paul-Barnabas relationships. I consider David Wasonga and I mean, it's Paul Barnabas now. Mike Rowan, who is an elder at Charlotte Avenue down in Rock Hill, South Carolina, who is there now. And I should be there. Our 10th anniversary and 5th graduation is tomorrow. And I'm not there. I'm the coordinator of that school. But I sent my message over, and Mike's going to take care of it for me. But this is an elder. By the way, another elder that Mike serves with is David Farr, who was director of East Tennessee School of Preaching for many years. Boots on the ground, nothing like it. These relationships. What I see is during class, men form relationships when they get back out in the field. Guess who David Odawa is going to call to help him, his buddies? I see it over and over and over. Myself and Charles Agutu, Brandon Kearns in the background, we're in Charles's home. You think it means something that a Wazungu white man is in their home and eating dinner in their home? I can guarantee you it does. Impact, huge impact.
You can't go visit a home without having a meal.
That's why I told the team, every time I take someone new, I say, don't eat a bunch your first meal because every stop you'll eat. I've been at homes and just stopped in to visit, and hospitality is huge. Can I go 5 more minutes? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So sometimes what you'll hear is, well, I don't know that maybe somebody has a disability and can't go. Would you just speak to how far an individual or a congregational dollar goes to supporting these types of mission trips? I've got here on Uganda, if 20 American dollars is 77,000 Ugandan shillings.
Yeah. The exchange rate today is 116 Kenya shillings per 1 US dollar. Okay? The average day laborer in Kenya who's out digging a ditch, working construction work, is making 500 Kenya shillings. That's $5 a day. And their inflation rate, reported inflation rate, is 13%. It's higher than that. An example, it's a little longer now. 6 weeks ago, a small bag of cornmeal, which is their staple, that'd be like our bread, pasta, potatoes, was 50 Kenya shillings. 2 weeks ago, it was 200 Kenya shillings. It's just slapping them right in the face.
And so
they're hurting.
So the point I raise is maybe we in the church, some of us aren't able to go, but being able to go and providing means for other people to go or to support congregations and schools, that is just as important
Huge.
as going.
Huge. I call it a team.
You got the workers, they just need the money.
Yeah. And the fields are white unto harvest. Now, this is in my presentation. I don't know how long you're going to stay because my time's almost up, but I want to get to that, and I want to share some things because I think it's important that we understand this is a team. We can't go without the folks behind us helping, and they can't go for whatever reason. And it's not it's us, and it's God blessing all of us. So you have now Elias, who was in my first class I ever taught back in 2006, I think, in Arusha, Tanzania. Now he is mentoring other people. He's mentoring John Uwanda down at Laita. George Omyango mentoring George. Here is Charles Heberth and his wife, Ahimidiwe Kamaro, these from Tanzania. Guys we brought up to help us initially, first couple of years at the camp. Here's Joseph. This is Joseph, the one who walked by and just heard me preaching and was interested. Bible classes. When I first went over, You'd ask how many attend on Sunday morning. They didn't even count the kids. Kids didn't count. Bible classes? No Bible classes. Now, because of I think the impact of Kenya, Christians for Kenya, Kenya School of Preaching, and just our being there and assisting, and some of our ladies going and teaching the other ladies how to teach. Now almost everywhere you go, they have a children's Bible class. You think that's going to make an impact on those congregations? This is Rose teaching. Now, Rose Wasonga, David's wife. Phoenicia Lucilla, Tom's wife. Tom had been a Christian about 4 years. He'd already graduated from Andrew Conley School of Preaching in Tanzania. He's back. He's planted the church. His wife was not a Christian. I get a frantic message from Tom. He had not paid his dowry. The family had come and repossessed Phoenice, took her home. Tom already had children by Phoenice. Tom had to come up with the dowry price and complete that dowry of a few cows, etc., etc. So we supplied Tom with he completed the dowry, and during that time, because of the kindness of American Christians, Phoenice's heart was softened. She has become a Christian, and she is on fire. Now here she is teaching teenage girls at the camp. She never ever would have done that had it not been for this Christian mentoring. Got to tell you the story of Heather. This is Aaron. We were at the sports field in camp 2016, and Heather says, "Is this boy one of ours?" I said, "I don't know. You know, we got hundreds of kids here. I don't know." She went over and befriended him. He was a true orphan. They have what's called a sub-Sahara sand flea that is a chigger that gets up underneath their toes, lays its eggs, and literally eats flesh. He was infested with lice, with the chiggers. We brought him, got him cleaned up the next day, brought him to camp, and here he is a few years later. And this is Heather showing him the day, that picture of when they first met. Aaron was a month and a half old when his father had already died, when they found his mother dead underneath an apple tree with Aaron in her arms. We now, as a result, Dean, you were talking, I wanted to get to this. You talked about helping, okay? Yeah. We have a family where I preach that they're supporting Aaron now on a monthly basis, and we've sent him to St. Ursula's Special School for Mentally Handicapped, and here he is this year when I visited him with his goats, with his banana trees that he's learned how to plant. Look at that. With this grove of trees that he'll be able to sell in about 5 years. The family has built a house for he and his orphan brother, and this man's going to make it. One of the villagers came up unsolicited while I was there and thanked us for helping Aaron. He's going to make it. He now can read a little bit, have no idea how old he is. Don't have a clue. Think the people back home who are supporting him on a monthly basis feel good about this, okay? The team. I'm going to go through this very quickly because we're out of time, but the Northwest Elders, the more people you can get involved. So, impact the local congregation. Dean, what does it do? Re-energize their commitment to the Great Commission, renewing their love for the lost, both stateside and abroad. The focus is no longer inward, it's outward. Encouraging Christians stateside to step up and grow. Common spiritual goal. Wish I could tell you more about the Ahono Tumaini School. We started in May 2011 with 20 students. One of our coal miners donated $200. We bought some of those little tiny plastic chairs. And we started now. We have 400 students preschool through grade 8. Our building now. Bought these huge cookers. We can easily cook in a couple of hours beans and rice for 1,000 campers. Our library, a lady, Margaret Bumpus, was a Christian educator down in Atwood, Tennessee, left the church in her will, and the church at Atwood wanted to help us. So we have one of the largest libraries in East Africa. We shipped over, made 3 shipments on containers, 37 more boxes going soon. One of our retired elders where I preach and his manufacturing facility where he retired, and they will ship our books at their cost to Mission Printing out of Richland, Texas. So now we have a local factory involved in mission work in Kenya, and they're glad to do it. The Maasai are coming in and reading from this library. We are rated the #1 school among 64 schools in the Western region, and recently we have been selected to offer a junior secondary school by the Ministry of Education of the Kenyan government as one of the best private schools in the country. Amortize this over 10, 12 years. There's Elias. Wish we could talk about him. I'm going to skip some of this. Now, Dean, your question. Allowing individual members who can't go to be part of the mission team through their prayers. I have people where I preach, they say, okay, I'm going to be praying for you at noon. Another one will say, I'm going to be praying for you at 6 in the evening, 6 in the morning. And not only do they participate in prayers, words of encouragement, financial support. This bicycle was purchased by our 4th grade class at Mannequin. It took them a year. Every time they came on Sunday morning, they put money in the jar. About $120. We had 2 young girls, 2 of our deacons' girls, who sold cake pops to purchase this bicycle for an evangelist. We had just this last trip, one of our 7-year-olds, when she turned either 8 or, when she turned 8, she took a bunch of her birthday money and said, I want you to help some orphans at the school. And we were able to have these 4 uniforms made. Think that little girl feels good? Involving the people. Congregations can be involved without making huge financial commitments. The individual going, amazing spiritual growth. I'm sure that those of you that have gone have experienced all of this, a deeper appreciation for what we have. I want to get to the end of this. These relationships. How do you put a price on that? How do you put a price on this? This little girl's name is Linda Darlene Reese Wasonga, named in honor of my wife. I think the short-term mission trips made an impact, these friends, and they maintain the relationship. Impacts the native congregations, impacts the native Christians, the sending congregation, and the individual going. To God be the glory. Alan took 10 minutes of my time blabbing, or I'd have a little more time. No, I deeply appreciate you being here. I love this work. I'm over time, 4:26, but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And I hope and pray that you'll keep this work in your prayers and in your thoughts and concerns. And if you get a chance to go on a short-term mission trip, do it, because it impacts people. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Very welcome. So good to reconnect with you all.